You wake up after a full 8 hours of sleep, but your mind feels like it's swimming in molasses. You know exactly what you need to do today, but the moment you try to focus, a heavy, dull resistance sets in. For millions of people, this sensation persists regardless of caffeine or rest. It has become a civilizational issue, a chronic state of mental dullness that actively strips away the ability to execute routine tasks or find excitement in daily life. This chart maps the objective reality of that dullness through post-pandemic medical data. Recovering patients show significant measurable drops in IQ, a 3-point decline for mild cases, 6 points for long-term symptoms, and a 9-point drop for those who required intensive care. While your experience may feel less severe than an ICU case, the underlying pathology is the same. That heavy sensation in your mind is the subjective experience of your brain physically throttling its own processing power. This mental suppression begins with a chemical reaction, typically triggered by chronic exposure to stress hormones like cortisol. The highlighted area behind your forehead is the prefrontal cortex, your executive center for logic and planning. Deep inside lies the limbic system, the ancient core driving raw survival impulses. When cortisol stays high, the primitive limbic system overrides the executive center, the prefrontal amygdala flip. The fog you feel is the result of your logical, planning brain being chemically hijacked and shut down by your ancient survival instincts. This override mechanism exists for a specific reason. In our evolutionary past, early humans lived in a world of extreme resource scarcity, where every calorie mattered. Your brain is an energy glutton. Despite making up only 2% of your body weight, it consumes 20% of your daily calories, making energy conservation a matter of life or death. When facing a threat where fighting or fleeing would likely result in death, the brain deploys a third option, the freeze response. The animal locks up entirely, waiting for the danger to pass, while spending the absolute minimum amount of energy. This instinct appears in human history during moments of inescapable danger. In World War I, hundreds of soldiers became entirely paralyzed in the trenches. Under the unceasing threat of artillery, their brains simply cut power to their motor functions to survive the trauma. Brain fog is that same ancient defense mechanism. Your mind is pulling the plug on its own capacity because it perceives you are trapped in a high-threat environment. In the ancient world, the predator eventually moved on. In the modern world, the stressors are invisible and never-ending. We face endless deadlines and digital noise and social pressure without the recovery periods our ancestors enjoyed. This leads to allostatic overload, the point where the brain's capacity to handle stress simply collapses. Physical illness adds a second layer of stress. Recent research shows that viruses can linger in the gut, changing the microbiome and depleting the serotonin levels required for your brain to process information correctly. Your brain monitors this constant stress and the allure of low-effort digital dopamine. It concludes that funding your logical, high-energy brain is a waste of resources when you aren't making any real progress. Your modern environment effectively hacks your survival software, convincing your brain that the most efficient way to survive is to remain in a low-power, energy-saving state. To reverse this cognitive shutdown, you have to physically prove to your nervous system that the threat is gone and your internal resources are stable. This requires triggering a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Just 20 minutes of daily aerobic movement acts as a signal to the brain, physically growing new neural branches and restoring your focus. You also need a nightly fluid flush. During deep sleep, your brain cells physically shrink to allow cerebrospinal fluid to wash away the toxic metabolic waste you accumulated during the day. Without this deep sleep, that waste remains, physically blocking clear thought. Reducing the processing burden is equally critical. By setting rigid routines and cutting screen time, you reduce the sheer number of decisions the prefrontal cortex has to make, allowing it to recover its executive strength. Curing brain fog is a process of active biological maintenance, pulling the brain out of its defensive low-power crouch through consistent physical signals of safety. This pervasive mental fog functions like a biological warning light. It signals that your cognitive economy is currently bankrupt. By actively rejecting cheap stimulation and adopting a structured lifestyle, you gradually rewire the connection to your executive function. You prove to your biology that it is safe to spend energy on complex thought again. You possess the biological tools to clear this haze. Through deliberate physical and environmental changes, you can step out of the fog and back into a life of crystal clear focus.